If you're watching this video, you mostly have struggles with your concealer. So today I'm going to be showing you my top 10 most used tips and tricks with concealer. And before someone comes for me, I'm 46 and these are the same tips and tricks I've taught my clients over the years, and I'm spilling those secrets so you can learn them too. So if you're ready, let's begin. First tip, instead of applying concealer directly and then spreading it out, take a little bit in the back of your hands and use a concealer brush to apply your concealer. Try to look up while applying your concealer to smooth out those fine lines so the concealer doesn't settle in them. And using a brush allows for more precise application, helping to target specific areas like dark circles. And the precision reduces the risk of applying too much product, which can lead to creasing or cakey appearance, especially in delicate areas like under eye. Tip number 2, if creamy concealers tend to settle in the fine lines and crease, use a pressed powder as a concealer. I'm using the One Size Turn Up the Base pressed powder in medium dark 1. I love smaller powder puffs for hard to reach areas like under the eyes. I'm saturating the tip of this with the powder and I'm going to gently press it under my eyes. As you can see, that covered my dark circles beautifully, and because it's a powder, it's not going to settle in the fine lines and crease, unlike creamy products like concealers. I often use this as an everyday concealer and when I need quick touch-ups. But the catch here is to use a powder that's a true match to your skin tone. If you have extremely dry skin and under eyes, this next tip is going to help you. Tip number 3 is a creaseless technique without using powder. First, apply and blend out your concealer as usual with a concealer brush. Wait for it to completely dry, and then to avoid creases, apply a small amount of setting spray onto the brush. I'm using the One Size Until Dawn setting spray. You can use whatever you have. And then lightly dab that brush over the concealer under eyes. This will help you set it without adding extra powder. Your under eyes is going to be crease-free but not dry. This next tip is for anyone who has puffy under eyes. All you have to do is store the concealer in fridge before application. I keep it for about an hour. I don't want it to be too cold. I just want it to be cool. First of all, that feels fabulous. And then I'm going to dot just a tiny amount under my eyes before I blend it out with a concealer brush. Cooling the product has several benefits. First, it thickens the concealer, so you get full coverage. And then because it's cool, it minimizes the puffiness under your eyes. And because it's cooler, it dries quicker and it stays longer, especially if you have oily under eyes. If you have mature skin, less is more. But if you have dark circles and you have to color correct, rather than first applying the color corrector and then the concealer, try this next tip. Take a little bit of concealer in the back of your hands and mix in a light peach corrector with it. Mix it up and apply it with a concealer brush. The peach in the concealer will help to cancel out the blue undertones, so it'll color correct and conceal without adding too many layers. You can see how beautifully that has covered up my dark circles, at the same time brightened my under eyes. If you have too many fine lines under your eyes just like me, try applying your concealer in the darkest areas of your dark circles, which are in the corners, in the inner and outer corners, and then apply a little bit more concealer in the center, avoiding those fine lines. Now make sure to blend everything out with a concealer brush, and you will observe some of that concealer gets into your fine lines anyway. But it's less product because you did not apply any concealer directly over the fine lines. Now take a small cotton swab like this and remove that concealer from the fine lines. And lightly dab everything with your finger before you lightly set it with a translucent or a loose powder. I'm using the One Size setting powder with a brush. That'll seal that concealer, and because we have minimal product over those fine lines, it's not going to settle in there and crease. This next tip is for anyone who has very dry skin and very dry under eyes. To get a smooth filtered look under your eyes, take a little bit of concealer and mix it with the tiniest amount of either a moisturizer or even better, an eye cream. I'm using the Tatcha Silk Peony Melting Eye Cream today, and I'm going to mix everything up and lightly dab it under my eyes with my ring finger. Wait for it to get a little bit dry before you lightly set it with a powder. While that gives you beautiful coverage, it's not going to look cakey or dry under your eyes. This next step is for anyone whose concealer doesn't last throughout the day. All you have to do is use an eyeshadow primer as a base under your eyes. I'm using the Urban Decay Primer Potion, which is one of my favorites. I'm just going to dot it under my eyes, applying a thin layer, and I'm going to spread it out before I use concealer over it. Again, I'm taking some concealer in the back of my hands, and I'm using a concealer brush to blend it out. Applying a thin layer of eyeshadow primer under your eyes before concealer helps it to stay crease-free and long-lasting throughout the day. That's because while it smooths out the surface, it also forms a sticky layer for the concealer to adhere to. So it's not going to move and it's going to stay put. And if it doesn't move, it doesn't crease. Of course, you're welcome to set this with powder if you prefer. This next step is for anyone who has deeper dark circles who need extra coverage but don't want the concealer to look cakey. Start with applying your concealer as usual. Then take a piece of toilet paper. I just split it into half and fold it. That way it's a smaller piece and it's easier to hold under eyes. Gently press it under your eyes, and then I like to use a soft powder brush to dab over the paper to blot the excess concealer. That's going to remove all the excess concealer, and that'll also help to make that first layer of concealer settle really well over your skin. Once you've blotted, now apply a second layer and blend well. While this technique gives you the best coverage, it avoids a thick, cakey appearance by allowing gradual coverage. So instead of applying too much product at once, we are gently blotting and layering it. And then, of course, if you prefer, you can set it with powder. This last step is my favorite. If your concealer creases no matter what, but you still want that coverage under your eyes, use a gel eye pencil as your concealer. I'm using this one from ColourPop. While choosing a pencil, try to choose something that's a close match to your skin tone. This one's a little bit lighter to my skin tone. I don't have anything that's a close match. Or I had one, but I've run out of it. So I'm using this to demonstrate. I'm just going to apply it like a concealer in my inner and outer corners and to cover up my dark circles. And I'm going to lightly dab and blend it out. Why I personally love this technique is it's not creamy like a concealer. So while it gives you fabulous coverage, it's not going to settle in the fine lines and crease. And because it's a pencil, it's going to dry down quickly. You don't even need a powder to set it. While none of these techniques are Botox, so they're not going to make your under eye fine lines disappear. They're not going to let it crease, and they're going to make it look softer. Creasing is when the concealer settles in the fine lines and separates. Like under this eye, you can clearly see that concealer has settled and separated out, so it has creased. While the techniques that I showed you today will prevent that, but please keep in mind it's not a cosmetic procedure, so it's not going to make your under eye fine lines disappear completely. I'd love to know which of these tips were your favorites, so comment below and let me know. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please thumbs up if you did. It'll only help motivate me to bring the best of the tutorials onto my YouTube channel. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I love you guys so much, and I will see you soon with a brand new one. Bye guys.